Piston rings on a Ford Taurus 2003 overhead valve 3.0 liter. I'm going to start by taking off the light stuff like the upper air intake and all the throttle body and all that junk while it's cooling down because I just got home. And then after that, I'm going to drain the coolant, drain the oil, drop the oil pan, and then I guess just work my way down from there on top. Compression test gave me the results of cylinder 1 about minus 20 compression, and cylinder 3 gave me about, I believe, minus 30% compression. Cylinder pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as you can see, I kind of prepped myself already. Got all my tools set. I bought a honer, which you would call, but I'm just going to be deglazing. Got my piston rings. I got valve lapping compound. Hopefully get myself to do that. If I have enough time, I pray I do. Got my oil. Throttle body cleaner. I'm going to try and record as much as I can because I only have 2 hands, you know, so I really do need this video as well. So let's get to work. Alright, got the upper air intake off and all the throttle body stuff. I just took the motor mount, part of the motor mount off the alternator. Got that whole assembly out over there to the left of that, the intake. Now I'm working on the belt, and after that I'm going to take the fuel rails off. This whole pack of wires. Squeaking. Alright, we got to the rocker arms now. Just got done taking the valve covers off. Sorry, I kind of skipped around. I figured out because totally slipped my mind that I forgot to pick up one of these torque set to get those off. And I got to get this tensioner off to get this whole mount off out of the head. And I can't really do much until I get the torque set. So I stopped filming because I thought I wasn't going to do anything else. Tomorrow I'm going to pick up a torque set, get this manifold off, get the heads off. Hopefully go smooth from there, and then just replace the rings and put it all back together. I was checking the oil, real good, just looks dirty. I haven't changed it in a while. Looks normal though, no debris or anything. Very clean, other than the brownness of it. Rocker arms look good. Valve springs look good. Continue on tomorrow. Alright, had a major setback. I couldn't get the tensioner bolt off the tensioner pulley. As of right now, I drained the coolant, I drained the oil, I got the coolant reservoir out, and I'm working on the steering pump right now. I'm trying to get that off the head. And after that, I still got to drop the oil pan, and then I'm going to start taking the lower intake, sorry. Alright, from here, I'm going to see if I can drop that oil pan. Alright, finally got the whole oil pan off. Took the oil pump off, cleaned that. When I got the oil pan off though, I found these little guys in my oil pan. I haven't really found anything else other than those two little things. I'm about to start pulling the lower intake manifold. It's basically just taking off bolts from here. I assume you guys know how to take off bolts. Make sure you keep track of all of them. Keep them in a pattern, whatever you gotta do. Line them up, label them, like so. Makes it a whole lot easier. Alright. Just had a push rod fall in there a little bit. If that ever happens, just use a magnet. Intake manifold. Bam. I went onto the heads now. I took off all the gaskets. So let's get to it. she goes. That's what she looks like. Good 30 pounds right here. Intake, valves, or valve stems, exhaust, and there you go. I'll get the second head off in a little while. I want to work on this side first, because this side's more important. I want to see what I'm dealing with. So here we go. Stop seeing all this stuff flake off, really. Specs call for 0.08. I'm using 0.02 right now. And you're going to measure, first, you're going to start off basically 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, if I had a larger thing obviously, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. After all that checks out, basically just clean it up, put it back on. Obviously I can't even fit the 0.02 in there, so this is, so far it's pretty straight. And if it does go through, just go on to the next larger size, which is 0.03, and see if that goes all the way through. And if it does go over 0.08, you have to get the surface resurfaced. Just take it to a machine shop and have it milled. All checks out pretty good. Alright, just got done cleaning up the surface area, the head surface area. Try and polish that up as best as I can. There's still a little bit of residue on there, but with the machine marks, they go left to right this way. So I tried to go with them as best as I could. And I haven't done this one yet. So you can see the difference there. Nice and black still. And nice and shiny. I did one head surface already. This front one I did. Still a little, like I said, there's still a little residue left, but there's the one I haven't done yet. Sanding it takes a long time, not gonna lie. After this next half hour, after I get these two other surfaces done, I'm gonna devote the next hour after that to piston rings and cleaning the pistons. And I'll show you how to clock your pistons, I'll show you ring gaps and all that. So let's get to it. I got piston number 1 out. But first, I want to clean this head gasket surface area. You're gonna take a razor blade and just very lightly just scrape all this off slowly. If you do it at an angle, you're gonna hit the surface of it, you're gonna scrape it, scratch it, whatever, and it's not gonna be pretty, it's not gonna be good. So you just want to do this nice and gently, slowly. We're gonna check piston ring end gap now. I took the top old one off, I just spiraled it off. They say you're not supposed to, but I heard bad things about the tool, so I don't know, I'd rather just spiral them off. Specifications call for the top ring end gap 0.25 to 50 millimeters, and then the bottom one in the blue. Piston ring end gap for the oil ring 0.25 to 1.25 millimeters. Top ring is black. You have an indicator dot, and you can see that a little bit. It's right there, right in the middle of the screen. That dot always faces up. The rest of the rings don't have it. They do not have a lip or anything. The top ring does. The lip faces down. And then you got your oil rings, which we'll check in a minute. I got the old ring off right now, which I'm going to see. This is one of the bad cylinders. how bad this ring gap actually is. So you're going to put it in here, pre-lube it first. I put some oil on the cylinder walls. Alright, it's in, but obviously it's not level and it's all messed up. So you're going to take your piston, put it in upside down. There we go. And then just let it sink down until the old rings meet up with the head. Now you're squared up. Now you just take your feeler gauge and check the gap. See, your end gap is right there. Try and do this with one hand here. So specifications call for 0.25 to 0.50 millimeters. This is the top ring. Start with 20. So obviously that fits in there. Here's 0.25 right here for you. You never want your ring gap too small, too. You always want it a little bigger. So this one fits 0.30. This one fits. Alright, here's a 0.40. If your ring gap is too small, you just take it to a file and file it down a little bit. Okay, 0.40 fits. Here's 0.50. And 0.50 fits. So yeah, it seems like that ring is bad. It's definitely a little off, so on to the next ring. I am pretty sure I just found my problem. Cylinder number 1 had low compression, so that's one of my problem cylinders. Here is piston ring number 2. Shredded on the, this is the lower side of the ring. This is the second piston ring. 0.50 fits, 0.75 does not, so I assume it's about the same size, from 0.55 to 0.60, somewhere around there. Next step, before you put your new rings on, just take one of the old rings, just run it through the grooves all the way around to get all the debris out. I'd take one of the ends if you can and just run it all the way around. About to put the rings on. Most compression rings are directional, meaning they have a top and bottom. Most top rings and second rings are different and cannot be interchanged. Most compression rings have a PIP mark, a dot, or the name top on one side, designating that side faces up. New cylinder bores must be conditioned properly. Use bores deglazed. In all cases, the final cleaning should be scrubbing with hot soapy water and a brush. Rinse in clean water, dry and wipe with oil and a lint-free rag until the rag is clean after the final wiping. Check end gap. 0.004 per 1 inch of bore diameter is the minimum. 3-piece oil ring installation. 3-piece oil rings are not directional and can be installed either direction. The ends of the expander must butt together in a solid part of the ring groove and not overlap. Oil rail gaps should be about 1 inch either side of expander gap, which I will show you how to clog them anyway. If the completed assembly rotates freely in the ring groove, it is correct. If not, start over. This one, ring 1, top ring. It's got the little indicator dot right there. It's got a white mark. Compression ring 2 is right below the white marked one, right here. It does not have any markings, so they do not have to face a certain way. These do because they have a lip on the inside, I believe. Yes, they do. And then oil rings. One goes on top, one goes on bottom, and then this expander goes in the middle. I'm about to check ring end gap first before I install them. I'm going to hone the cylinder bore next, and then throw the piston in. So here we go. Alright guys, the oil rings were about somewhere between 0.50 and 0.60. Those are within specs, 0.25 to 1.25, so that's beautiful. The second compression ring is about, I'd say about 0.45 millimeters. Specs are 0.25 to 0.50, so that's perfect. I'd rather have it a little bigger anyway, just so for expansion, because you do not want these two close together, because when they expand, they'll butt up, and then it'll just be problems from there. So this one's done. I marked the top, little blue mark, a little bit. I see it. I don't know if you can. That indicates that it faces to the front of the engine. Also, there is an arrow, there it is. That arrow points to the front of the engine, so you just throw it in that way. About to clock my rings. This is the pattern I'm going to be using. People call it the 45-degree method. So you got compression 1 on the lower right, compression 2 ring end gap on upper left, oil end gap 1 on the lower left, oil end gap 2 on the upper right. So you'd never want these end gaps meeting up. That's the whole point of this. If they meet up, you'll just lose compression and it'll be a whole problem from there. This points to the direction, so intake, exhaust, and then wrist pin on the piston. And that's basically it. You just line up the end gaps where they needed to be, put the ring compressor on, and tap her in. Before I install my piston, I will be deglazing this. Honestly, I don't like these things that much. It's not a ball honer. It's one of the, honestly, in my opinion, I don't even like this thing. I know a lot of people don't either, but it's got to be done. And honestly, I can still see the cross marks in the cylinder bore, so it's really, honestly, not that bad. And there's no lip here. Maybe probably like a .0001 or whatever. There's like barely anything there at all. So that is not bad at all. If it was, you'd have to get it rebored, but this is in good shape. To do this, you lube up the cylinder first. You stick this in. You're gonna crank it as fast as you can, and then move up and down as fast as you can. You want to get the cross marks, like an X pattern in there, so you're going to want to move up and down real fast. And to only do a few passes just to deglaze it. You don't have to overdo it. Real quick, real easy job. So I'm going to give it a go here. You do not want this thing tight at all against the cylinder walls. You want it loose. So just like that. And then keep it spinning as you take it out. Alright guys, I'm about to fill the piston in. Got the ring set. About to put the bearings back on. See this little taper right there? This little groove? It's always groove to groove. I'm going to put this one on the top. And since I know there's a groove in here to match this groove on the bearing, so that's going to match up. I know this is the front because the arrow points towards the front of the engine. So you need this facing out towards the bumper. Got the bearing all lubed. See that little tab right there? The little groove? It's groove to groove. There's a groove on the piston bearing and there's a groove on the cap bearing. If you put it backwards, this bearing is going to spin because these little tabs lock it together. So if you don't do that, it's going to be a huge mess. Groove to groove, remember. So I'm going to throw this on. I got all the rings on. I'll show you the crankshaft in a minute, but as you can see, I shined her up, deglazed the cylinder walls and whatnot. Basically getting ready to put the heads back on. I'm going to oil all that stuff, obviously. I'm going to oil the heck out of it before I put the heads on. And clean the surface one last time. Both surfaces. Also, what I was doing last night, but I didn't finish, it's called a thread chaser, that's what it's called. Honestly, you can just use tap and die set. Just cut some grooves in it, save you $60 so you don't have to waste your money on the tool that they sell. Just cut like 4 or 5 slits in it or whatever, all the way down. And then what I was doing like this, just throw it in your head bolt hole, and as you go down, you'll hear like small cracks. If it gets stuck on one, go backwards. You don't want to break those threads in there. But once it stops, I was just kind of doing that a few times. And then after you pull it back out, you'll see all the shavings and junk trapped between these threads. This back hole down here had a lot of oil in it. I got all that out. You want these holes nice and crisp and clean. I love how these pistons look though. They look so shiny. So much better. I love it. I'm going to show you the oil pan real quick. Or the crank, there she is. Yep, that's what she looks like. And there's the oil pump. And transmission. One more thing, I'm gonna see if I can turn this crank over for you guys. I'll show you the pistons moving. It was a lot of effort to get this thing turning. Tune back on once I get these heads on. I'm gonna show you the bolt pattern and how to tighten them down. Getting ready to put the heads back on. Got the gasket here. Right there it says up. So what does that mean, guys? You know, faces up. And this is Felpro. So I'm gonna throw this on and throw the bolts in, and then I'll show you a torque pattern. There we go, got number one head on. For the bolts, I've honestly been getting mixed answers for this. I think I am going to go ahead and put a thin layer of oil on the threads. I'm not going to overdo it whatsoever. I'm going to very lightly coat it and then wipe it off with a rag. I am not going to use much at all. See, just a little shiny like that. I cleaned all my surfaces real well, blew out my holes, my head holes, and then used the thread chaser. Now I guess we're good to go. You guys get the head. I'm going to put the bolts in this one and then we'll clamp down. Alright, it's a good thing I checked the torque specs. So I wrote inch pounds instead of foot pounds, and it's definitely foot pounds. So I want to double check that. That's what we got. Step 1 is tighten to 37 foot-pounds. So I'm going to start with this back head here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to go ahead and hand tighten these first. Step 1 is tighten to 37 foot-pounds. Step 2 is loosen the bolts 360 degrees, or 1 full turn. Step 3, tighten 22 foot-pounds. Step 4, rotate 85 to 95 degrees. Step 5, rotate additional 85 to 95 degrees. So we'll start with step 1. Good on that one. Alright, step 2. Loosen all the bolts 360 degrees. Well guys, would you believe that this clip is currently 12 years later? Yeah, I kid you not. And unfortunately, I did actually end up losing a lot of footage, including the last portion where I torqued down the head bolts. And I am actually pretty upset about that. And I actually lost the clip of torquing down the lower manifold as well. But I am actually happy that I did end up somehow saving all of the footage that I do have throughout the 12 years that it's been sitting on my hard drive. So that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. This thing runs beautifully. Obviously it has been 12 years and I have been driving absolute insanity out of this thing. So that being said, this is what she looks like now. So I'll do a recap of what was missed on the last bit of the footage. Obviously, where I ended up, I was torquing down the head bolts. There was a torque pattern and sequence that you have to do. After that, after you torque the heads back on, you torque your lower intake manifold back on. Those little torque screws there. There is a torque sequence for that and pattern as well. And also when you place the gaskets back on, you do have to use some silicone, some RTV on both sides to ensure proper gasket adhesion so no leaks will occur. And then from there on, you're basically home free. You just put your upper intake back on, your throttle housing, EGR valve, alternator, and for the most part everything on this motor has been essentially replaced. New steering pump, new alternator, new water pump down there, new idler, AC, new tensioner, and a new harmonic balancer down there. That has been replaced as well, that reservoir. New coil packs. I need a new battery, but it's been a couple years for that. I have blood deep brake lines as well, but it's still jet black, but it is what it is. Kind of just use RTV for this. This little rubber boot here for the intake likes to dry rot right here, so I kind of just RTV'd the absolute heck out of it, and I haven't had problems since. Usually when this starts cracking, it'll start sputtering, and that's always the culprit. I go right to that every time, and that's usually the issues. I'll fire her up for you just to have you guys know that it actually does run, so here we go. There she is, 12 years later. Still running strong. Thanks for watching, everyone.